Johnny Two-Face here, back with another reaction video. This time reacting to the 4th episode of the series for extra history about the Haitian Revolution from Extra Credits. And if you haven't seen my reaction to episode 3, please go check that out on my channel. And so basically the first 2 episodes were the basics, and number 3, like, episode 3 gets all how it all explodes, and then the enslaved who turned into like their own little rebel army were at first not very organized, but then here come a black general of the French army, Toussaint Louverture, who's made the rebels more organized, and also, and I remember rightly that his skills politically to organize peace talks between the free people of color and the white plantation owners, like the big whites and the little whites, and so as the series goes along, it's gonna like because it's a revolution that doesn't get talked about a lot, it'll just start becoming more and more apparent how closer it's getting between, as it's been said before, the most successful slave revolt. So at the moment in I believe it's in the 1790s, the island which Haiti is founded was, I believe it was called Hispaniola, but it wasn't all a French colony. A portion of it was the French colony of Saint-Domingue, and the other part, the bigger part, was owned by the Spanish, called Santa, and that was named Santo Domingo. So anyway, I've rambled on long enough. The link to the original video will be in the description down below. Please go subscribe to Extra Credits and check out all their historical content. And disclaimer again, with these these historical reactions, if I don't talk a lot or have a lot of input, it's a subject I'm not very clued up on, so I will try and add as much input as I can, but it might not be as useful as I first imagined. So let's not waste more time, let's get into this. And
Saint-Domingue, September 1792.
1792.
2 men arrived from France. They're here to address the question of rights for the free people of color. It is...
Hang on. I might end up, sorry if I butcher the pronunciation of these names. Etienne Polverel and Leger Felicite. Oh, I'm gonna imagine the complaints from French people who speak French speakers in the comments, and nor native French people. So I apologize for butchering the pronunciation of the names. I don't know why I bothered attempting the pronunciations. Oh, I'll turn captions on.
Men arrived from France. They're here to address the question of rights for the free people of color. It is the second commission, the first group having carried a completely different message. But this group makes their intentions clear when they land. They're here to ensure the free people of color receive full rights, as French law now requires. They will radically integrate the assemblies, and they've brought 6,000 troops to make sure that everyone, rebellious slaves and big whites alike, stay in line. To tamp down the murmurings amongst the big whites, they say their orders do not include the abolition of slavery. They're here to save slavery, they say, not end it. But end it is exactly what this second commission will end up doing. And there's 6,000 troops.
It's bound to at some point.
They'll not nearly be enough. Despite assurances, the white population of Saint-Domingue feared the commissioners were secretly working toward emancipation. And there was a reason for that.
Shame it didn't happen sooner.
And the big and small whites made the decision to refuse to work with the commission, comply with their laws, or even help them fight the rebellion. The free people of color, though, were only too happy to show their loyalty to the commission. Soon, the free people of color and French troops were fighting side by side, making great progress against both white separatists and black rebels. Which was good, because roughly 5 minutes after the commission got to the colony, yellow fever turned their 6,000 reinforcements into 3,000.
Wow.
But this alliance only deepened suspicions that the commission...
That's another thing that people don't mention is the diseases that they suddenly pick up because they're not familiar with the area. Like these troops fresh from France don't know anything about, probably don't know very little to nothing about the native diseases, and they can pick up, which if you don't know, which can really catch you off guard. Like diseases in one country could be completely different to another. So, but I have heard what was it, yellow fever. Yeah, yellow fever apparently is one of the most lethal, but there's probably more lethal fevers mentioned, so...
Commissioners meant to end slavery, suspicions that boiled over when the commission issued a decree that they were reinstituting the long-ignored Code Noir, a set of regulations governing the treatment of the enslaved, from providing proper food, clothing, and housing, to opening channels the enslaved could use to report abuse. This was the last...
So, basically, the governors are trying to have better treatment of slaves, which probably won't go down well with the big and little whites, as I can tell by this this subtitle here. As I said, I got caption subtitles on because there are some names which I don't know how they're spelled, or I hear them pronounced but I might mishear them, so
straw for the big
so it might help.
They had already been buddying up to the new governor, a pro-slavery plantation owner like them, and soon he was insulting the commission and threatening to counteract their decrees. So the commissioners, deciding that this constituted rebellion, marched into Le Cap and imprisoned the governor. Except he escaped, and all hell broke loose. The governor rallied his troops and attacked Le Cap, where the commissioners and soldiers were now based, besieging and taking the city. But during the fight, fires ignited the colonial port, burning down most of the city's grand Paris-style buildings, operas, and boulevards. The commissioners themselves ended up outside of the city and needing reinforcements. Worse still, both Spain and Britain had declared war on France, so the Spanish got busy.
So, I'm basically, oh yeah, because at this moment in time, because France, Spain, and Britain have always been fighting each other on and off. So even though Britain's oldest rival, one of their oldest rivals, was the French, but Britain, as people who've learned history know, Britain has had conflict with Spain as well because of all the because of colonization and, you know, trying to outdo each other. All these empires, whether British, French, Spanish, or Portuguese, trying to outdo each other, which I might be wrong saying Portuguese, because Portugal and Britain are the oldest set of allies. Well, Portugal and England, but Britain and Portugal have one of the oldest alliances of all time, so
sponsoring and fighting alongside
could be wrong.
Like Toussaint Louverture, while word was a British force was already on the way. The commission needed troops fast, so they did something unorthodox, maybe out of desperation, or maybe because they saw an opening for a move they wanted to make anyway. They put the word out that any formerly enslaved person who fought for them would gain their freedom and full French citizenship.
But will they though?
Thronged in from the countryside to join their forces, and they pushed the big whites and their allied government out of Le Cap.
Try new Tropicana Plus Power Punch, a boost of magnesium to help reduce tiredness.
Grammarly can help you write quickly and confidently.
Oh,
so you
Grammarly
never have to slow
again.
down at work. Stay on top of it.
Over half of the colony's white population boarded boats and fled overnight. but now agreeing to free a few people with conditions. Let the genie out of the bottle. Once Saint-Domingue's formerly enslaved population heard that emancipation was in fact on the table, rumors of abolition raced across the North Province. And on August 29, 1793, the commissioners took the lead. Pressed by the rebels, Spain, and now Britain, the colony slipping away, they did the one thing that they believed could turn the tide. A general emancipation. All former slaves born in the colony, along with their families, would be freed. Yet while this news was greeted with enthusiasm in the rebel-held North Province, not all the rebels came to the Commission's aid. Toussaint Louverture and many other generals were
That's not how that was spelled. Okay, that was people got to remind that when you turn on like the subtitles, they don't always spell the names right.
Freedom would hold. After all, the Commission was exceeding their authority. Indeed, they'd even gotten a recall order due to their actions. And the last colonial governor who'd overstepped had been recalled to France and guillotined. Also, this Republican French government had already become infamous for changing its mind.
Yeah.
Because remember last episode, when the free people of color had rights, and then they didn't, and then they did again? Yeah, well, the rebels remembered that too. Not to mention previous trades of freedom for military service had also gone badly. And Louverture, along with these other generals, had a more consistent ally.
I wish YouTube would fix some of these subtitles, because they keep spelling Toussaint Louverture wrong in this video for some reason, and it is kind of frustrating.
By a rival power who owned the western half of the island, Spain. In fact, though Spanish troops had only crossed the border recently, Spain had covertly supported the slave rebellion since its earliest days. But now with open war declared, Louverture's forces were receiving arms, ammunition, and even uniforms from the Spanish. And that alliance with Spain did seem more suited to Louverture. After all, Spain had not promised them liberation. It offered to recognize that the enslaved had liberated themselves. Spanish political policies, too, lined up with the rebels. Because most of the rebels were royalists, who, due to incorrect rumors, believed King Louis was pro-emancipation. They disliked revolutionary ideals and symbols, mostly because their enemies, the small whites and the free people of color, had enthusiastically adopted them. Not to mention, Republican France was making moves on religion, suppressing the Catholic Church and replacing it with their own secular variant. And most of the rebels found that deeply offensive. Yeah, that's a wild story, actually, and we'll get to it one day. But there were also cracks forming in this Spanish alliance as well. First of all, the war in Europe had turned, and Republican France suddenly looked like it might win. Second, the big whites who'd evacuated to Barbados had convinced the British to invade, under the specific promise of restoring slavery and racial apartheid. Wherever the Royal Navy landed ships and took ports, they put everyone right back in bondage. So technically, this alliance with the Spanish put the rebels on the same side as the British-aligned plantation owners, and Louverture knew this was not sustainable. See, he had advantages that other rebel generals did not. Louverture was literate, had briefly owned a farm with slaves, and he had been in plantation management. This meant that not only could he keep up correspondence with allies, but he had also long practiced navigating white society. Now sure, the Spanish had other rebel allies, but Louverture kept up a lively correspondence. And actually, not just with his allies, but with his French enemies as well. This would become a hallmark of Louverture's strategy. A savvy politician, he would always seek favor from all sides, and his vision of the colony always consisted of integrating the island's black, white, and free people of colored population into a single society. But he was not naive. He knew that the freedom the Spanish were promising was at odds with the revived slave system the British were offering the big whites, and he saw Spain's commitment to racial equality wavering. As both news and the rhetoric of abolition crept across Saint-Domingue, both his political ideas about general emancipation and his political calculus began to shift, because the revolution was beginning to craft its end goal, a thing that had been nebulous and confused up to this point: the complete abolition of slavery. Also, the French were eager for Louverture to defect. Despite having no military experience before the rebellion, he had blossomed into one of the most able commanders of the conflict. When he captured European officers, he treated them well, and had them instruct his men. He ensured they operated like a modern military, but also kept one foot in the guerrilla tactics that had served the rebellion so well. And he had the most important strategic position in the colony, garrisoning a line of forts that separated the rebel-held North Province from the French-held South and West. He had effectively split the French force, the commissioners in the north and the free colored troops in the south. Then, something incredible happened. In February of 1794, representatives of the colony spoke before the National Convention on the issue of slavery. It was a tricolor commission, consisting of one of the big whites, a free black army officer, and a free person of color. They argued that emancipation was the only way to keep control of the vital economic engine of Saint-Domingue. Not to mention, it was also the purest expression of Republican principles. They got more than they bargained for. Not only did the National Convention end slavery in Saint-Domingue, they ended slavery in all French colonies. Moreover, they declared that all men living in France and its possessions, regardless of the color of their skin, were full citizens and protected by the Constitution. Upon hearing that the French had actually fulfilled their promise of emancipation, Louverture ditched his Spanish allies and switched sides. He now had the largest and most professional force in the colony, allies that aligned with his political goals, a strategic position to fight both the Spanish and British, and the backing of a major power. By 1795, Spain was knocked out of the war, ceding their side of the island to France. British troops were dying in droves of yellow fever, with 30,000 more on the way to help end the war. Yet, no good. The time of the European powers in Haiti was waning, and the rebel generals would instead turn on each other. For the war of muskets and uniforms was over, and the war of knives had begun.
EVE Online is a vast...
Special thanks to our
And that'll do it. This has been another interesting video by Extra Credits, and I'm a little bit annoyed about some of the subtitles that I put on, because a lot of the names, especially French ones, they never spell properly, and so this will be a fun video to edit. So yeah, so this is like digging more into the more complicated stuff, like, you know, like the free people of color. They're now becoming more and more like a professional army, and the big and little whites trying to suppress the enslaved back into bondage, and former enslaved back into bondage. Sorry, and so it'll be interesting how it plays out in the next episode. So that'll do it. This has been another good video from Extra Credits. If you like this reaction, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next.